Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Landi Lodge, where today we're talking about that blue blur Sonic the Hedgehog. And we've got a great guest, but before we get into that, we got to dish out a thank you to the sages of the lodge. The beautiful names you see on your screen right here are the people we could thank for today's episode, including two new sages of the lodge who joined us last night, Umbra Munin and Game Changer. Big thanks to them. They're the reason my nonsense can keep on going the way that it has. If you want to be a Sage of the Lodge, there are links in the episode description. You could be a YouTube channel member, but just know, all I ask is that you come hang out. Everything else is a bonus. So, without further ado, let me introduce today's guests. Chris Landi is back in the lodge today, talking Sonic the Hedgehog, basically a sequel to our last podcast. Dude, how you doing?
Doing all right. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm excited to talk Sonic. That's something I never thought I would be in a million years, but here we are. You know, I feel like the part of me that's been a Sonic fan since I was a kid sunk into a deep depression, but the last couple years they're starting to pull me out. They're starting to make me feel optimistic about Sonic the Hedgehog. That's a little dangerous. I don't know. How are you feeling about him lately?
Yeah, I think it's essentially the same thing. I sort of revisited a lot of the games about 8, 9 years ago, and again, I kind of sunk back into that depression again of just, damn, I wish the good games were good again rather than some of the ones that we had in that dark time. But lately, the past few years, between Sonic Mania, the two movies, and now Frontiers, I'm very optimistic about the direction that they're heading in. But it could also mean that they put out Sonic Boom or Sonic The Lost World as their next project or something like that, and we keep you back to where we started.
Yeah, you know, they're never too far from the next blunder, and I feel like they haven't strung enough hits together where we could be forgiving about the next blunder, but they're almost there. I want to give quick shout
Right.
outs to some people hanging in the chat already. Kevin Ribeiro says he's babysitting his nephew, but his nephew loves Sonic, so that lines up
Oh,
for
that's
him.
awesome.
We got some sages, Orpheus Joshua and Lamb in the chat. And Stilette Luray, how's it going? Says double Landy Wednesday. Yes. Yes, it is. Double Landy Wednesday. All right. So basically, for those who maybe not have seen the last podcast we did together, it was before Frontiers came out. And we were asking, is this Sonic's comeback? The movies just came out. Now, I'm someone who I enjoyed the movies, but I do expect better from Sonic the Hedgehog. And personally, in a post-Frontiers world, I feel like they delivered. And I want to talk about that a lot. I want to primarily talk about Frontiers. Then maybe we could ponder the history of Sonic the Hedgehog, or the future rather, and what's coming down the line. But first and foremost, I want to talk Frontiers. It's the latest game in the franchise. You know, you played it before I did. Watching you play it made me want to play it. So what is your Spark Notes overall review of the game?
So definitely, we had talked about it last time. Honestly, open world game, but it's a fun game where you're free to explore this entire world. And then ultimately, when you complete that world, you'll go to the next one. So that's exactly what they gave us. It was very exciting. It felt very on brand for Sonic. I think if they try to just make their own version of the Wild, but they took some inspiration from that and put a Sonic spin on it. No pun intended. I thought the combat was great. I think last time you mentioned it, within your top five favorite Sonic games was Sonic Battle. I think a lot of the, at least animation of the moves was very much taken from that.
It's a
So I
great
like that
point.
it seemed like they were taking from the best aspects of all different kinds of games and really bringing it to life on the new consoles, which was awesome. I really liked the story. It wasn't super complicated. It was a little confusing at first, but as things pieced together, you learned more about Sage. You learned more about this kind of new relationship that Sonic has with all the different characters, or at least
Yeah.
more developed relationship that he has with them. I thought was really powerful. I really like Sonic's interactions with each character. That first world when you're with Amy, I think is great. Amy just seems a lot more mature. She's gone from that sort of
Yep.
fangirl of Sonic into just someone who's his friend and who has been there along the way, but has just this endless amount of compassion for other living beings, which was very important
Mm-hmm.
in this game. I like how it tails. There was a big still big brother, little brother sense, where Tails is still very short on confidence and felt that he was the burden to Sonic.
Yeah.
But Sonic was in pep talks. Then Sonic and Knuckles just had all the fun, and it was so great. I loved it.
Honestly,
I
Sonic and
loved
Knuckles
it.
was my favorite dynamic. Between all the characters, the Sonic
Yeah,
Knuckles dynamic I absolutely loved.
yeah, it was my favorite. I completely agree. And I really liked how when Sage was speaking a lot with Eggman about Sonic, Sage starts the game with this sort of Sonic is the enemy and he has no hope. He shouldn't have hope. Like he's doomed. But then she realized that Eggman and Sonic sort of in a way respect each other, and she acknowledges that if the two of them work together, what they can accomplish. And in particular, it's almost a callback to Sonic Adventure 2 and Sonic Heroes
Yeah.
when they do work together at the end and they're able to take down this seemingly impossible enemy. So I think the story hit on all marks. The combat was new, it was cool, it was intuitive, which was important because sometimes when game franchises add different combat and styles, it can just be a little hard to get used to. I don't think there was much of a learning curve. I think it was very easy to get used to. Um, and yeah, I really liked pretty much every world. I think that third one I got lost in a lot, the one
Hmm.
where you're with Tails and it's all the different islands. So that one I think could have just a little bit improvement. But otherwise, I was a big fan. I like that one towards the end where you go to all the different towers and Sonic is just exhausted. But it really put you to the test of everything you've learned along the way and made you sure that you had mastered all forms of combat and platforming. And alas, all the bosses were really cool. The
Hmm.
soundtrack was sick. I mean, definitely some Paramore influenced music, which
I would
that's
say
always
so.
pretty
I would
cool.
say so. That's a good
And you
observation.
know what? And this is like I talked to you about. I feel like the characters' personalities were just older and more grown-up versions of the characters that we got in those 3D versions when we were kids.
Well, that's
So
what
I
I like
like the
so
thing.
much that this actually one of the things they did, and to be fair, Sonic does have a history of doing this, but they treated this game like it was part of a canon. They treated this
Yeah,
game like all those past 3D games actually happened. And that's something the fans want to see. I think that's some of the stuff that made the early 3D era of Sonic so interesting. But I want to pick your brain about a number of those things. I think we could go one by one. The
sure.
the characters in combat, I guess I especially want to start with. The combat,
Yeah,
I will say, the combat is what pleasantly surprised me the most. The combat could have
yeah,
been like average, run of the mill, and I probably still would have been happy because I don't come to Sonic for the combat. But I found
sure.
myself looking for fights. I found myself going out there and picking fights with every enemy I could see, finding the biggest boss and be like, yeah, if I take that freaking guy down, I could beat this game faster. Like just it felt like such a welcoming challenge because it was so much fun. And you talk about Sonic Battle, right? And really I didn't realize it until you said it, but that's what this combat kind of felt like a callback to. Like they almost took
Yeah,
took a lot of that in the way you unlock certain moves and things like that. It just seems so cool. Like, and we're talking about beyond just basic combat, like using your homing attack on the nearby enemies. There are boss battles in this game that are basically like a stage and a boss in one, which was really cool. Like you had to navigate a boss the way you would navigate a stage, and you had to navigate this like stage to get to the part where you could harm the boss. It was,
right.
and Sonic has a history of doing stuff like that before, but I felt like it was so seamless in this title in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. The one that comes to mind in particular is a mini boss. It's in the second and third worlds where you're sort of grinding on those three rails, and the boss is sending things to attack you, changing
Hmm.
up directions, and you essentially have to go through each level and light up the entire rail of each to then attack them. And I thought that was it's good platform, bottom line.
Oh yeah,
It's awesome.
and I want to talk about that too, the platforming, because I thought some of the stages were really strong. My biggest critique would be I want more of them. Um, and maybe some more low hanging fruit. You know what I mean? I felt like there were times where I would unlock a new zone and it took me a while to get to a stage, or there were long gaps in between me playing the stages. which is the highlight of any Sonic game, or as it should be. Yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I saw what they were going for with short and simpler stages, or the stages generally focused on a certain skill
Yeah.
within the game that you have to master. There's the dreaded stage 1, 2, which was like the hardest stage to get an S rank on, like in the
Mm-hmm.
entire game. So it's interesting that the second level was that. But I do wish that they had stages that were a little more detailed and that there were more of them. And if this is just a
Yeah.
stepping stone, then I'm okay with that. I'm happy to see what's to come, but that's definitely one of my biggest critiques. I wanted both more stages and just a bit more of a challenge where it's not like I feel like I keep playing the stage so I get the S rank, where I keep playing the stage to complete it and then get the S rank. Because I feel
Ah,
like
that's
none of
such
the
a good
stages
point. That's such a good point.
none of the stages really challenge me to the point where I'm struggling to just beat this alone. Yet some of the bosses had that challenge. Some of even just the exploring and finding where you need to go had the stage themselves did it. I'm not saying I need another crazy gadget or another last level Sonic Unleashed. I don't think they need to up the difficulty like that, but just more of a challenge in the stages themselves.
No, this is such a good point because there were so many stages, and as much fun as they were, again, that it was the highlight of the game for me. Um, the S rank was like the easiest achievement on all of them. Like I would get the S rank before I got the red coins. I would get the S rank before. Like I feel like it
Correct.
was just so much easier to accomplish that first before getting that checklist. And I like what you said is like I should be coming back to the stage to push myself to the fullest to reach that S rank, as opposed to, okay, I got the S rank on my third try, but I'm still trying to find that last red coin. Things like that. That
On the
actually
third
resonated
try
with
of a
me.
level that takes 60 to 90 seconds. So you're really just firing through it. These aren't levels that are taking anywhere from 3 to 10 minutes. These are 60 to 90-second levels. They're
Right.
very short. And getting the S rank is complete this level in 50 seconds. Otherwise, if it's in 60, it's A, 70, it's B, etc.
You know what the stages almost felt like? You know when you spend like an hour, hour and a half cooking a meal and then you eat it in 5 minutes? That's what it felt like. Like you're running around for like an hour trying to unlock the next stage. You finally did it. You get in there, and then in 5 minutes, you've S ranked it. You've gotten all the achievements, and you're ready to move on. So I
Yeah.
guess, like you're saying, some stages with a little bit more substantial length probably would have been a good idea. But I also understand if they were maybe trying to go for that Sonic the Hedgehog 2 vibe, where the stages are relatively
Right.
short. But with Sonic 2, I'd go for it was there were so many of them, you know?
Yeah, there were plenty of zones in that game that the length of the game feels appropriate.
Exactly. And now, I want to touch on the characters because I think they were so much fun. And I want to shout out the chat. It looks like we have some Rouge the Bat simps in the chat. That's their words, not mine.
God bless.
They're saying they'll
God
never be
bless.
ashamed of it and that they just want her in the next game. And I mean, listen, if
Look, I was confused as a kid playing Sonic Adventure 2, man. That was a weird feeling I
yeah, when you
had.
when you're 6 years old and you see breasts on a humanoid bat, it is a strange thing. But anyway,
Yeah.
I'm sure she'll be back. Rouge the Bat Simps. I'm sure she will be back. But I wanted to go a little bit further on some of the characters you were talking about, starting with Amy. Like, I loved how every character was portrayed in this game, and I wouldn't say Amy was my favorite, but she wasn't my favorite character, but she was like my favorite character, my favorite character growth, I guess is what I would say. Because, like you said, I feel
Yeah.
like Amy too often was either falling into damsel in distress or being a Sonic the Hedgehog simp. And she just swayed back and forth between those two, and that was her personality. But now they sort of introduced that she's kind of the more like compassionate one, that where Sonic is a little bit more erratic and go, go, go. She's a little bit more stoic and steady. Like, I feel like they just added so much to her personality that her and Sonic almost kind of became a duality, as opposed to just like, okay, Amy gives Sonic a reason to always be running because she chases after him and he gets to run. Like, don't get me wrong, I think
Right.
that's a cute trope. Don't get me wrong, but I'm glad to see that we're kind of moving past that now with Amy.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's like I was saying before, she just seemed more mature as a
Hmm.
character and a more relatable character too.
Yeah,
Because as much as we play these games because we love Sonic, but we don't necessarily fangirl over him.
right.
And again, the damsel in distress, it's just like, all right, I don't want her to be Princess Peach. I want her to be Amy. And her conversations with Sonic were very just impactful. And you see, like, okay, this is so much more of a genuine friendship now.
Correct.
It's
I
like if you
actually
think
felt
of
like
it,
they were friends.
well, yeah, and while all the games made their, I don't know if there's an official Sonic the Hedgehog timeline, but with how many games and how many stories they've been together throughout, they should have some kind of friendship, and they should have something that has a history and something that's developed from that damsel in distress and fangirling into no, this is just who's been with me throughout my life, who's been with me along the way, and that's why we can speak on this level, and that's what it felt like.
Yeah, and again, like you said, you kind of got the feeling that the two of them had been through it before, right? You got that with every character, is that like, even though they're in
Of
this
course.
predicament, there was sort of this idea of like, all right, we've been through it before. We figured it out last time. We could figure it out this time. Um, but again, I really enjoyed Amy's character, and I think it's got me feeling very optimistic about her in the future. Because not that she wasn't enjoyable in the original 3D games. I think probably Sonic Heroes was her as her most enjoyable back then because you kind of got to see her fulfill this leadership role. But again, even in that game, so much of her motivation was Sonic, you know? Um, but I love the way she was portrayed, and I thought they did a great job with her. Who was in the next zone? Was it Tails or Knuckles?
Knuckles was the next zone.
Okay, so let's talk about Knuckles because I thought that Knuckles in the movie was very good. A little bit too much of a dimwit, but for the most part, Idris Elba and the writers nailed it. Knuckles in the Sonic Boom show was straight up a doofus, but he was funny. To me, I was like, I feel like this is the first time in a long time I'm seeing the Knuckles that I knew.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The Knuckles who was in those old 3D games, the one who was in the Sonic X cartoon. Um, he was the overall banter between him and Sonic, that sort of friendly rivalry sort of vibe the two of them gave
Yeah.
gave off, that they could sort of pal around, but that they also revere each other, right? Much in the same way you talked about Sage picking up how Sonic and Eggman had that respect for each other. You could just see it between Sonic and Knuckles, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a great lore that the two of them have together. They start out as bitter enemies, with Knuckles being manipulated by Eggman,
Hmm.
and then towards the end of Sonic and Knuckles, they end up fighting one another, and then realizing, oh no, this was a diversion for Eggman to get away,
Hmm.
essentially. And then Knuckles starts to become more of the anti-hero type, and then ultimately he ends up being on the side and best friends with Sonic and Tails when he was otherwise a loner prior to that. And then now it's just like, all right, Sonic, you're good, whatever, but you're not that good.
Hmm.
Like it's just it felt very it felt good. It was just fun to watch them, have their little go at it every now and then, like say, oh, well, if I were to, but
Yeah, again, there you had the same thing with Amy, a feeling of these are two characters who have a history together. I think there were less mentions of chronology with Knuckles than there were, say, Tails or Amy, I felt.
of course,
But I felt like they didn't need to. You know what I mean? I felt like they really didn't need to. I feel like so much of Sonic and Knuckles' friendship kind of thrives on the whole in the moment banter, as opposed to Tails, which is very much about their history. We'll get into that. Um, but overall, he was a delight to see. I felt like it was the Knuckles of old, the Pumpkin Hill Knuckles. Um,
yes,
he's great. He's always been my favorite Sonic character. I think he still is. I just miss playing as him.
yeah, and that was going to be my next point. The last time we talked about this, we really drilled down on those four characters, particularly Sonic, Tails, Amy, Knuckles, and it's just when we were referencing the Sonic Origins cutscenes
Hmm.
and such, and you said somewhere along the way we lost this, and this is what we wanted to see in Sonic Frontiers. And if I recall correctly, I don't believe that there was a scene in Frontiers where all four of them were together,
Except for the
unless
ending.
at the the ending. Yes, rather no, yeah. Excuse me, the ending. There was that beautiful shot of the four of them where the tornado comes in. Yeah,
Hmm.
but I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of that, and I would have loved to have been able to play as each of them. Like, imagine
Yeah.
even the comment they could do with Amy and her hammer, dude. That would have been sick.
It would have been sick. I do respect though that again, playing as Knuckles is probably my favorite thing to do in a Sonic game, but I do respect that they're like, all right, listen, we keep fumbling. Maybe let's just focus on one character's gameplay. Because again, like you're saying, if you do
Right.
rope in those other characters, it's not like they're just Sonic skins. They've got their own abilities, they've got their own quirks.
Yes.
So I can definitely understand them wanting to stick it to the whole front, stick it to Sonic basically, as opposed to the others, which I guess begs the question: is this the new model? Like, is this what we can expect from Sonic moving forward, or do you think this is just like one string of games? Like, you'll have your Frontier-esque games, and then you're gonna
Mm,
have where they go back to just sort of their basic approach. Because I guess, and that's the thing, is what even is their basic approach? They don't have one.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, after Sonic Heroes, well, generally after Sonic 06, they really lost their way with that game being a failure. So they just tried all these different angles
Mm-hmm.
constantly. I mean, they had a game with Shadow where they give the guy a gun. They had a game where Sonic's at night. They had a game where he's turning into a werehog. They had, they were just, and then Sonic Boom tried to bring back the whole Sonic Heroes type. It didn't quite work.
Mm-hmm.
Sonic Lost World tried to be their own version of Mario Galaxy, and that definitely didn't work. I didn't play Sonic Forces, so I can't really speak much to that. But
Nobody played
yeah,
Sonic
they just
Forces.
yeah. Well, it came after Mania, and I heard it was normal, so I chose not to play it. But that's the thing. It's just like I think the most standard version of Sonic are the side-scrolling games, but 3D has not figured out its identity yet. And Frontiers is the identity of the style of game that they'll create. Because even Adventure 1 and 2 were very different games. Adventure was actually more of an adventure
Mm-hmm.
game, and that it might actually be closer to Frontiers than any other
Yeah,
game, and that
that's a good point.
there are just these different kind of hub worlds that you end up exploring, and you find the stages along the way. So I think
Ooh.
Frontiers could be the model that they go with. I mean, even Sonic 06 was actually like that. Now that I think of it, it was kind of you would explore and find the stages along the way.
Maybe Sonic
But
Frontiers has actually always been the vision.
yeah,
Because, no, when you're saying that, the fact that Sonic Adventure 1 was a lot like that, they call it Sonic Adventure 2, but it's an adventure game in name only. You know,
yeah,
it's a stage after stage
an
kind of thing.
action game, action platformer. Yeah,
I'd like to see them, because again, and this is my gripe. I know Sonic was an open world, it's technically open zone, is what they call it. And
yeah,
my gripes with these games, as much as I love them, some of my favorite games are open world, open zone, whatever you want to say. Some of my gripes is like, why is it always in some barren post-apocalyptic fucking nightmare? Why is it always that? And I know why. It's because you could do open world and you could leave most of it empty. But I would like to see maybe a game like Sonic Frontiers that gives me hub worlds like in Sonic Adventure 1. You know what I mean?
yeah,
I think maybe like, because I loved this game and I love what they did, but I don't know if I would like a Frontiers 2, you know what I mean, which is just like a bunch of new zones and a new story. I feel like as much as I did love this game, I felt like it did leave a little something to be desired in its sort of world presentation.
yeah. Yeah, no, I think I completely agree. I think, if they had something like, because Sonic Adventure 1 had Station Square, Miss Ruin's Egg Carrier as the place to
Mm-hmm.
explore. So I think something along the lines of you're in a city of some sort, and maybe influence from the different cities of the world, much like they did with Unleashed, where every
Right.
world was essentially a different continent
Yep.
of the world. There was an African themed one, there was a North American, a European one, etc. So if they did something like that, where maybe there's one world or one zone that you explore that's very much city influenced,
Mm-hmm.
one world that's very much the wilderness, one world that's just like some kind of robotic and
Ooh.
created.
Yeah. You can you repeat that last part again? You cut out for a second there. After you said robotic world.
Oh, some type of robotic that like Eggman has created. Maybe if there's a world like that.
Yeah, stuff like
I
that.
I
That's what I'm getting at. As much as these zones were cool, it wasn't Sonic's world. I would like to see a
yeah
Frontiers game that primarily is taking place in Sonic's world, something that's populated, has places we'll recognize. The characters are there with us, right? There's not this reality wall separating us between Sonic and the rest of the cast. They're actually in that
yeah
world together. I think if I were to want something more from this style of game, it would have to be that.
yeah absolutely. And who knows? Maybe they've done it before, but I'll always take a restructured or remastered Green Hill Zone. It is
Mm-hmm.
just the level I think of when I hear Sonic. Just that it doesn't even need to have the music. Maybe just for the stages they throw it in every now and then, but something like that. It doesn't have to be every stage restructures it, but you could even say that, like, yeah, Green Hill Zone exists in Sonic's world, and that's why he's there so often.
Exactly, because I think Stilette was in the chat yelling lore, more lore, more lore. That's what people love, especially now. So if they could create an environment that allows them to plug in more plug in more lore, and kind of celebrate it more, which is one thing I think the movies do very well, is they celebrate Sonic the Hedgehog and his lore when they get the chance. Um, yeah, that's really what I would like to see from them. I just wanted to mention a few things in the chat. I saw some cool stuff. They
Yeah.
talk about the Sonic multiverse. So apparently, the way it's considered is the video games are seen as the main timeline. This is coming to us from Kevin Ribeiro, and like the shows and movies kind of have their own line. So everything is a different verse, which I think is pretty cool. And
Okay.
that's a again, multiverses kind of they can spiral out of control pretty quickly,
Yeah.
but if you keep them neat, it could work. Stilette Leray
Yeah. I
says, I'm
mean,
not a developer, but I believe filling in open worlds requires money. And so, yeah, that would explain why so many of
he's
them are
on to
barren.
something there. He's on to something for sure.
But you were about to say something.
No, I like the idea of them doing multiverse. I mean, it's obviously just so popular now that um, a lot of different types of mediums are doing open world. I mean, of course, I think Endgame really blew it all up, and that
Mm-hmm.
everyone else like, okay, now we could do our own version of this. We could do multiverses now. Now we can
Mm-hmm.
do this, and that's always kind of been there. I mean, if you grew up watching Dragon Ball Z, you already had an idea about multiverse theory
Mm-hmm.
and how it can be confusing, but when it's done well, it can all come together. So I like the idea of there being sort of the movies have their own version, TV shows have one, the video and if they do decide to bring it all together, it could work. It definitely can.
Yeah, and again, even though things going multiverse can spiral out of control quickly, keeping I think what helps Sonic in terms of the multiverse idea is that they're doing it by the medium, right? There's not multiple universes in quote unquote the video games, or there's not multiple like they see there's not multiple movie verses, right? Every medium
Yeah.
is kind of stringing its own timeline together, which is cool. Because again, that's what we want to see from Sonic. But I guess let's take a minute to talk about the soundtrack. I want to make sure we touch all facets of this game. Now, as bad as Sonic the Hedgehog can be, like the soundtracks just don't miss. You know what I mean? And that's as true for Frontiers
Mhm.
as it was for Sonic '06. Like the soundtrack is out of control, dude.
Zebrahead's promo song for Sonic 06 was a hit. There's no denying.
Zebrahead's promotional song for Sonic 06 was the best part of Sonic 06. And
Yeah,
I love to say this because I if I don't laugh about it, I'll cry. The reason why we haven't gotten a Sonic Adventure 3 is because Sonic 06 was Sonic Adventure
was
3.
Sonic Adventure.
Yeah.
Yo,
And we didn't like it. So they're probably not going to bring it back. But anyway, the soundtrack was out of control. Well, what I loved about it was like there were cues in battle. And I know the Devil May Cry series does stuff like this too. But it's like as the battle was ramping up or as you were ramping up combos, like the music would get like louder and like a bit more intense. I don't know how much of that was volume control with the sound effects and how much of it was the game reading that the battle was intensifying. But like little touches like that, I absolutely loved. And the fact that like you could go from this sort of like ambient, overworldy music to just like this dubstepping, like rockin' bass turned up all the way battle, like with a mothership of an enemy, like
screaming vocals, like angst intensity.
like it just drops on you, man. It's smooth. Like it's smooth.
That's the thing. I remember when we were at mom and dad's house and you and Charlotte were over and watched me play that. I was up to that first boss of that first zone, like that first main boss, and you both were just like, "Is this the game? Is
Yeah.
this whoa?"
Well, because this was around the time that Pokemon Scarlet and Violet had come out, and it was Charlotte and I's plan to buy that game. Like we've always played Pokemon together and stuff, but when we saw the game was basically unfinished, and it's one thing when you release a buggy game or a bit of a wonky game. It's another thing when the game is literally unfinished. Now, I would like to play that game one day. All I would like is for them to patch the bugs, but it kind of left this hole in our backlog because we were expecting to be playing Pokemon. But then when we came home, when we came back up to what were we in town for again? I can't remember. Was it a wedding?
You guys had a wedding.
Yeah, we were in town for a wedding. Yeah, yeah, and we were watching you play it, and we were like, oh, like, well, this looks polished. You know what I mean? And what did you play it on?
It's like a finished game. I played it on Switch, so not even on PS5
Dude,
or anything.
I played it on PS5, and it was smooth.
I watched some of the footage. It looked clean on PS5. I almost wish I got it.
But no, yeah, Lamb in the chat, Sage of the Lodge says Frontier soundtrack is just so fun and bouncy and really addictive to listen to, for me at least. Yeah, no, I think fun and bouncy is a good way to put it because
fun is the best word because it was.
Which is what we look for with Sonic the Hedgehog, right? We're not looking for Shakespearean dialogue, you know? We're just looking to have some fun.
Yeah, exactly.
But let's see. So we talked the combat, we talked the characters, we talked the soundtrack. Were there any other elements of the game? I mean, we could talk about the plot a little bit. The plot was I thought it was good. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, it wasn't.
It just doesn't seem like anything to write home about.
Yeah, it wasn't something that was going to blow me away. I thought that it was a little confusing at first, but that was their point. They were building into it. But ultimately, yeah, it was a relatively straightforward plot. I really enjoyed Sage as a character. I always liked that sort of AI figuring the world out, or a sentient AI figuring the world out, putting things together, despite all the knowledge that they have. It's human connection and emotion that they try to understand, and then they try to figure out their own emotions as well. And that something about that I've always really enjoyed. And back Sonic Adventure 1, they did a great job with Gamma on that.
Yeah.
And Sage, I think,
good
took it and built upon that whole idea and made it even better, I thought. So I really like her relationship with Eggman, how she even referred to him as her father.
That, to me, dude, was the best part of the plot, was everything between Sage and Eggman. Everything between the two of them, to me, was the highlight of the plot. Everything going on with Sonic and his friends was cool, but I feel like the highlight of that really was the interactions. Watching everything with Sage and Eggman grow, and then getting to the end where you find out, Eggman really cared about her.
Yeah.
You have a like maybe this wasn't the case for you, but like for me in the beginning, I kind of projected my worst interpretation of Eggman onto him and was like, he doesn't care about Sage. He's just using her.
Yeah.
She's just a tool to him. Like that's where my mind went.
Yeah.
And I liked how the plot little by little proved me wrong. And when Sage was saying things like, oh, maybe you and Sonic should work together. Imagine what you could accomplish. And, my head goes, it's going to take an apocalypse for that to happen because Eggman would never do it. But then again, you see that, like, Eggman, as awful as he could be, like, he does have a heart underneath that skeleton,
Yeah.
And so it's like, maybe there is hope for a guy like that.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great way to put it. I mean, and you've seen him in previous games, treat his creations as just robots. Or even, Sonic Adventure 1,
Mm-hmm.
I that a lot today. I'm happy about it. With Chaos, he's just like, no, you're going to be the monster who I'm just going to feed, and you're going to destroy everything, and
Mm-hmm.
I will be the ruler. With Sonic Heroes, what he was doing with Metal Sonic, like even Sonic Adventure 2, everything with Shadow, he bottom line didn't really give a shit about him. He just saw like, oh, you're the quote unquote ultimate creation. You're like Sonic, you go take care of him.
Yeah.
You know? But with Sage, like you said, he genuinely cared about him. There was something real there.
Exactly. And like you said, I think probably the most profound thing is we're so used to Eggman just building robot after robot after robot. And when he isn't collaborating with a robot, be it Knuckles, Shadow, Chaos, to him they're just tools. They're expedient. They're just someone to help him get to his goal at the end of the day. Whereas with Sage, he had a stake in it. And I don't know, do you think, spoiler alert, if you do not want to be spoiled on the end of Sonic Frontiers, thank you for watching, because it's about to get very spoilery. 3, 2, 1. So do you think Sage is coming back?
I'd love her too.
Me too.
But I'm not sure whether Ben almost tries to recreate her with the same programming and almost makes a clone of her that has memories, or he finds a way to revive her.
That could make her his Shadow, right? Because it was his uncle who made
Yeah.
Shadow in that way. I almost can kind of see the parallels between Robotnik's uncle and Shadow, and then him and Sage.
Yeah.
So, and I wonder, like you said, how like the Shadow who comes back to us in Sonic Heroes is technically a copy, and now that Shadow
Yeah.
has to deal with the fact they're just a clone. Could make for a
Yeah.
good arc for Sage.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and then it's just a question of, am I real? Am I the first clone of the original? Am I the 20th clone of the original? How real am I? Am I always just going to be recreated no matter what? Do
Mm-hmm.
I, and therefore, are there any stakes for what I do because I'll always come back as something else? Like,
Yep.
there's just, because there's, Shadow the Hedgehog, as much as that game doesn't hold up, and that's putting it very lightly, there was that one level where you fight a bunch of Shadow clones, which tripped me out a little bit as a kid. It's because it's right after you find out you're not playing as the original Shadow.
Right.
So, and then all of a sudden, oh, here are a bunch of Shadow clones. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna beat these Shadow clones because I'm playing as this Shadow, but what makes this Shadow different from the rest?
Right. What makes this Shadow better? What gives this Shadow the right to live over the other shadows? Stuff like that is very cool because
Yeah.
we talk about it in our previous podcast, but like the subtext of all these Sonic games is it's science and nature. It's science versus
Yeah.
nature, and
Bottom line.
yes, science has to reconcile itself with nature because if you push nature too far, it's going to come strike back. You see that with chaos. You see that with the ultimate life form. It's a very interesting theme that wasn't it was prevalent here in Frontiers, but it wasn't as at the forefront as some of the other games in the series. But as far as Sage is concerned, it's weird because, like, if they bring her back, it's cool because she's a good character. But if they don't, man, that can really grow Eggman's character.
Yeah, that's a very good point. That he'll always have that loss that he suffers from. Maybe in the next game, it's him trying to bring her back, but he's not able to.
Maybe he
And it's
blames
something
Sonic.
that not even he could build. Yeah.
You know, why does Sonic get to live, but Sage had to die?
Yeah.
You know, things like that. Because
we were all fighting that battle together. Why did Sage not? Why couldn't Sage make it?
100%. And it would actually be pretty cool if, like, the future conflict is caused by Eggman trying to bring her back. I don't know.
Oh.
Something like that could be cool. Because I really like this angle of Eggman. You know, he's always been a goofy villain, you know what I mean? And he still is. He's freaking Eggman, you know?
Yeah.
But this
and
was like
06 tried to take that away and make him like this tall, in shape Eggman. And I was like, what the hell's going on?
No. He's Eggman. Look, if you wanted him to be Robotnik and you wanted him to be like some intimidating guy, you had your chance back in the early 90s.
Yeah.
It's gotten away from you now. It's Eggman now. I mean, he's still Robotnik, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, and especially now with Jim Carrey cast as Eggman in the two movies, you know, you casted a very goofy guy that people now familiarize as Eggman.
Yeah, and again, even though he's been a very goofy character, I really liked this angle of giving him something more. Like, I really liked it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, much like how those core 4 characters grew, so did he. You know?
And I think a lot of the older video game IPs really struggle with this. You know? Like, it's because back then, you know, in the 90s, there wasn't a lot of room for character development. There wasn't a lot of room for plot. Characters had to be almost like stereotypical parodies of what they were trying to portray. You know, just to get the point across, they had to be so visually, such a visual parody that it got the point across. Things are different now. I don't know. It's exciting. It's exciting because, like, for one, like, when it comes to the future of Sonic, I'm not just interested in where the gameplay goes. I'm interested in where the story goes too. And like you said, these characters, they haven't aged chronologically. Sonic is what? Technically 32 years old. The first game was 1991. But seeing these characters grow up and be part of a chronology was not something I expected them to uphold, but I'm so glad they did. And that's all I want from the future. Just, I guess if I could sum it up, I want the open zone format in Sonic's world. I want the characters on our side of reality. And more zones. The gameplay does not really need to change. You could make like a Sonic Frontiers 2, keep the gameplay relatively the same, tweak it up a little bit. But the combat was so cool.
Just add more combos and more moves and stuff. But otherwise, and maybe just add 1 or 2 more playable characters. You don't even necessarily need Amy, but add at least Tails or Knuckles as a playable character as well. Then, that's all they really need to change about the gameplay at that point. But yeah, I think also just lengthen some of those levels or give us even more of them.
Yeah.
That's really it.
That's
but
all.
Otherwise, I really didn't walk away from that game with a lot to complain about. So I was pleasantly surprised. I expected it to be good watching gameplay and footage of it, but then actually playing it, I was like, okay, this is awesome. I didn't put it down when I was playing it, you know?
Dude, no, I flew through it pretty quick. I think I beat the game within like 3 or 4 weeks. Like you, I couldn't put it down. It felt so good to just pick up and go, you know?
Yeah.
It felt so good. Okay, so speaking of the future of Sonic the Hedgehog, are the Chao Gardens ever coming back?
I want them to so bad. I think this game would have benefited so much from it because there were different things to collect in the world and all the zones. They totally can bring it back, and it will just have people put more hours in. With online multiplayer now, imagine just being on Discord with your friends, and you
Chris,
all have like
Chris,
different Chow Gardens and such.
don't get me wrong, Chris. It would be amazing for the player. Like everything you're saying, our
Yeah.
chows could do battle, our chows could raise, they could hang out, you could do all these things. But these companies, they don't listen to that shit. They don't listen to that shit. You know what you tell them?
Hey,
Imagine.
someone's nephew's watching. Watch that language.
Good, good. I want to watch it. You could sell us so much DLC. Do you know how many Chow skins you could sell your player base if you had a Chow Garden? Do
Yeah.
you realize if you have something like a Chow Garden, the players are just going to keep playing your game? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they'll just keep logging in. They'll just keep playing. And it I don't know, like excuse me. Sometimes I drink too much water.
Yeah, it happens.
Well, you know what it is, dude? So you know how like where we grew up, I never had allergies. I was like the only one in the family who never had any allergies. So
Hmm.
living in this much warmer climate, it hits me in the winter spring.
Look at your book.
Dude,
Yeah.
my basically very early in the morning, and once we cross like 7 o'clock at night, my throat gets pretty dry in the like late winter, early spring months. So I'm not used to dealing with it, but we make it work. We make it work. I see the Chow Gardens is getting a lot of love in the
Yeah,
chat.
of course it is. Because the most hours that we probably put into Adventure 1 and 2 were Chow Garden. You know, how many times will we replay City Escape just to collect items for our chows? Or replay
Yes.
Emerald Coast to collect
Yes.
items for our chows? Oh, we could get, and then we'd go on Game Facts. Where can we find, what level can we find this item? Oh, if you go to Crazy Gadget within the first, you can do that. And even finding the Chow Garden key so that the second you complete the level, you go directly to Chow Garden. There were just things like that that encourage you to explore the level or play different missions within the level from the start. Like if you complete the get 100 rings, this is your reward for Chow Garden. There was so much to do in regards to that.
So, and again, like you're saying, the way that it would improve the replay value, the way that it would just keep the player coming back, keep you replaying, and you could even say like all you have to do is keep adding goofy and silly items. But I also understand if it's like there's no one in house that wants to do it, right? One thing that made Frontiers really cool is like this game was clearly made by a bunch of people that wanted to make this game. So I think if we get a Chow Garden, Sega's going to have to find someone that wants to do it. Because I imagine it's probably not the easiest thing to program. But yeah, let's see. So Charlotte has joined us. Says I logged on my phone just to talk about Chow customization DLC and how I would buy all of it. Hi Nick, hi Chris, hi everyone. Hello Charlotte.
Hi, Charlotte.
Thanks for joining us. Stilette says, "Oh yeah, regional allergies are a real thing. So hard to deal with." I thought I got the magic gene in our family, but I move into a warm climate, the switch flips, and now it's 3 months a year with a dry throat. But we persevere. We persevere. Stilette says it's kind of insane they haven't done a Pokemon Go style Chow game. Yeah,
Oh,
that's a good point. Like a Pokemon Garden. Yo, so somebody get Game Freak, get Stilette on the phone. Get her into the
no.
freaking room. I'd play Pokemon Garden. Play that in a second. Lamb says, hell, make an official Chow Garden game for mobile. It'll get 5 million downloads in less than 48 hours. Well, considering how much Japan loves mobile gaming, yes.
Yeah, I would play that for sure.
Starlatte says, I disagree. How could you not want to make a Chao DLC? You know, I come from that same school of thought of like, how could you not want to make something so awesome? But I don't know. I don't know. I imagine it was a headache enough to make this game, but there's a lot of money to be made and fun to be had with a Chao Garden. Mm. All right. So, we've talked about his future. We talked about the soundtrack. We talked about the combat. We talked about the characters. What haven't we talked about? When it comes to Frontiers, I know Sonic himself has plenty we could go in on. I just want to make sure we cover all of Frontiers.
Yeah, I think that's all I really wanted to touch on with Frontiers. I think I've said everything that I wanted to say regarding the game. Overall, great game. Highly recommend it if you haven't played.
Honestly, it's the best 3D Sonic game. In my opinion, I think it's the best 3D Sonic since Adventure 2.
I agree.
I like it more than Sonic Heroes. I like it more than Generations. This is good. Lamb asks, have y'all talked about the voice acting in Frontiers? We have not. So this is why the chat's here, baby.
Great, yes.
This is why the chat's here.
Oh my God. Yeah, so Nick, I remember saying at first I wasn't quite used to Sonic's voice. I was a little thrown, but it grew on me. And then I think when I started to accept the idea more that this is an older, kind of young adult version of Sonic, as opposed to like the cool, happy-go-lucky teen, we have more of just like the optimistic young adult now. So them deepening the voice a bit was interesting, but I liked it. I love Knuckles and Andy's voices in particular. Those two I thought were perfect. I like Tails' voice, but Tails they usually do well, so I wasn't worried about that. Sage's voice was excellent. You know, just it was a very pondering type voice, almost childlike, which again, going back to my point about this sort of AI, despite all the knowledge within their coding and their system, is figuring out the world and other sentient beings. So yeah, I was a fan of the voice acting for sure. Sonic was the only question mark at first, but as the game progressed, I grew to like it a lot more.
Yeah, I like when it comes to Amy, Knuckles, Tail, like it was everything we expect. There wasn't the voice direction for those characters was like pretty much the same thing we've got in the last 10, 15 years. Sonic definitely was a departure from what we're used to. And I'll say this, like I was off put at first too, but it really grew on me. I think Roger Craig Smith will always be my favorite because he was the voice of Sonic like when we were growing up. But this was really cool because I like that it, I have my opinions about John Ralphio Sonic. I'll take like older angsty Sonic any day. I like it. It's not my favorite Sonic voice, but if this is what the direction is moving forward, I think it's a good move because like what so many of these companies have to realize is like, yes, Sonic the Hedgehog originally was targeted at kids and still is to a degree. Pokemon, Mario, all these things, which are for everybody, they're not just for kids, but generally are targeted at kids, but their player base is adults. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're kids still playing Pokemon and Sonic and all of that, but the general audience for these gaming franchises is older. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's what I would say. Stilette asks, we've stated we want Rouge next. Who would you guys like to see in the Frontier sequel? Okay, I guess if we could pick one character from the canon. I mean, I'm going to go Shadow. I'm going to go Shadow. I didn't miss any like secret scene that Shadow was in, right?
No, not that I know.
Okay.
You could find big in the game.
Shadow would be my choice.
Yeah, I guess Shadow would be next. I don't necessarily need him in the next game. I'd rather them really just give us more of the characters they already gave us, and
Yes.
then maybe bring in Shadow. But if he were there, I wouldn't be upset. Be like, okay, yeah, bring him in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's
And
it's
just give him a better voice actor than whoever did his one line in Generations, because I know it's a very particular moment, but it's awful. Um, he literally just says, "You got this, Sonic," and that's what he sounds like. And I wanted to throw something on
no.
TV.
You
Yeah,
need edgy Shadow. You know,
it's gotta be,
over the
gotta be
top
Robert.
mid 2000s, over the top mid 2000s hot topic. That has to be the voice direction for Shadow the Hedgehog. Has to be.
It's gotta be Twilight influenced Shadow the Hedgehog. Give me Robert.
Yeah.
That's
Honestly,
that's who I want for that third movie. That's who they need.
I would do it. I would do it. Kevin Ribeiro says they want Blaze the Cat. That is a
I was
based
thinking
choice.
Blaze for a second. Blaze would be cool. Sonic Rush is an underrated game.
I loved Sonic Rush. Yo, High Five Ghost just dropped in on Twitch. Dude, what is.
Petra?
Yeah, it's Petro. What's going on, man? Try and join us on YouTube if you can. That's where the party's at. Kevin Ribeiro says, depends on what region in Japan Pokemon gets real sus. I'm not quite sure what that was in reference to, but that's my own fault for having a shit memory. Lamb says, want to talk about the 3 waves of DLCs for Frontiers that are coming this year? That's right. There is a bunch of DLC coming.
Oh, didn't tell. I am unaware of this, actually. I did not do my research.
Yep, we're going to pull it up right now. Here we go. Sega unveils Sonic Frontiers roadmap. So he's going to have a Santa outfit. Ooh, new modes. Oh, wow. Lamb, this is why you're here. Let me pull this up. So it looks like jukebox, photo mode, new challenge modes. So 3 things coming in wave 1 are jukebox, photo mode, new challenge mode. In update 2, we're getting Sonic's birthday, open zone challenge, and some new Coco. Update 3, playable characters and new story, showing not only Tails, Knuckles, and Amy, but Sage. So Sage is coming. She's coming back.
Play a Sage.
She's coming back.
I want to play a Sage, dude. I think what they may mean by new story is character's perspective within the story, much like they've done in the past. Yeah, because Sage her back to life. I think you'll get Sage's part of the story, and then her meeting up with Sonic, much like Knuckles tells me, like, what are they doing in this like other wavy verse that they're in? You know, what are they doing along the way? Or maybe after you sort of free Amy and Sonic regrets to the second zone, maybe Amy now explores that zone, and then Knuckles explores his zone, Tails explores his zone, something like that. So that is definitely the most exciting part of this for me. Wow, it's almost like playing a new game, which is great. Challenge mode. Do they give any details on that, or does it say new challenge?
No, this can't be real.
What?
So I'm getting this from the official Sonic the Hedgehog Twitter account, and the follow-up tweet says all free, by the way.
Okay.
What? What?
Sick.
I refuse to believe that's not a troll. Like, I almost refuse to believe I'm not being trolled.
I mean, if it's from the Twitter.
If it's from the Twitter.
I don't know. Usually I don't go to Twitter for accurate.
Here, let me. Achoo! Achoo! Woo! Okay. I'm just going to scroll their updates here, see if there's anything else, but that is pretty interesting, man.
Yeah, for sure.
Man, that's... Again, I don't know if I should... I almost feel like... Okay, see, this doesn't make any sense to me. They're gonna give us free DLC, but they don't want to make money on Chao's. I don't get it. I don't get this company. I don't understand. I'm not complaining anymore. Free DLC is free DLC, but geez.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like a sorry, like, hey, we know you guys spent so much money on shit games throughout the years. Here's just one. Here's a rebate. Here's a video game rebate.
Here's all the money. There you go.
That's crazy. I'm gonna see if I can find anything about. Have they announced anything about release dates? Okay, the most recent thing I'm seeing here. Sonic Frontiers could be releasing DLC Wave 1 soon. This coming to us from MSN. Game Rant. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm trying to see if we can get a date or anything.
I mean, look, if it's within 2023, that sounds good to me. I mean, one of them comes with the Santa outfit, so I imagine at least by next Christmas.
I'm seeing that the game had a recent update on March 2nd, and a lot of people seem to be theorizing that this is them sort of putting in the pre-work for what's coming. That's nuts. Good for them. They really did a good job. And I'm seeing on Steam, it's got a 91% approval rating.
All right.
That's remarkable.
Game being released and to still have that high of a score is pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's funny again, just to bring us full circle. We talked about on the last podcast we did together, is Sonic in the middle of a comeback? And I'd say he is right now. He is right now. Yeah, this is definitely a comeback. Not that they can't slip up. You know what I mean? I guess, all right, here's something we could do. What is something, if you could have one thing in the future of Sonic the Hedgehog, what would it be?
Honestly, I think I've said a lot of what I've wanted.
I want the movies to get better. That's what I want. I want those movies to get better. That's what I freaking want. I'm not a hater. I enjoyed my viewing both times, but they can do better. I believe in them. I think they could do better. I really do.
They can do better with the soundtrack. That's
the biggest issue.
I don't, like, if you're going to put a Bruno Mars hit, don't put his hit from 2014. What are you doing? First of all, don't put them in it. No hate or disrespect to Bruno Mars. But, like, what's his music doing in a Sonic movie? Makes no sense.
I couldn't agree more.
And when it takes place in Russia, like, that was ridiculous.
The worst part is, dude, that scene of them in the Russian bar in the second movie is the funniest scene in either film. And the fact that it was interrupted by Bruno Mars, I wanted to pull my hair out. I was like, I was just having so much fun. And now I'm listening to Bruno Mars from like 15 years ago. It wasn't even like the latest Bruno Mars song. Like,
no.
It was crazy. But that's one thing I want. I want the movies to get on the narrative level of the games. I understand it's Hollywood. We got to have some human actors. We got to have a little Wachowski over here, a little Wachowski over there. I get it. But I think that what I would like from Sega, if I could ask for anything in the future Sonic the Hedgehog, I would like those movies to get their narrative structure closer to what they're doing here in the games. You know what I mean? Really lean on the lore and the characters. Again, all the little Easter eggs are fun. The Mean Bean Machine coffee shop, them running through the ancient ruins, all that stuff is cool. But I don't want it to be Easter eggs anymore. I want it to be, in the plot. And they did have some of that, but that's one thing I would want. Because I would love to love these movies, but I just like them.
Especially because Shadow's coming in for the third movie. Like, they really, like, if they're making a Sonic Adventure 2 movie, they gotta really drill down on this being Sonic Adventure 2 themed. It doesn't have to be the same exact plot or anything, but it's gotta really take influence from that game and from that game's lore.
And they'd be foolish not to. I mean, Shadow himself, if you're going to introduce Shadow, Shadow is the most plot-thickened character in the whole canon. Like, if you're going to introduce Shadow and everything he is, you're either making a 2-hour movie or the Wachowskis are taking a big back seat.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That would be my, again, I would just want to be clear. I'm not trying to be a hater. I like the movies. I do enjoy them. I just think they could be a whole lot better. And I think Sonic Frontiers is proof of that. You know? I think Frontiers is proof of that.
Absolutely.
Here's a fun fact. Speaking of Sonic, I heard this for the first time. Did you know that back after Sonic 1 was made in 1991, Sega of Japan wanted Sonic CD to be the next game. But Sega of America said, no, Sonic 2 is what people want. So there was this dispute between Sega of America and Sega of Japan about what direction to take Sonic the Hedgehog. Sega of America won that dispute. And they went down that road. It's just interesting to think about that the direction of the series might have been a lot different.
That's the thing. I'm not sure which one would have necessarily been the better outcome because it seems like we would have gotten both games regardless.
Yeah.
So, no, it is just something interesting to think about. I mean, it seems like Sonic CD technically takes place before Sonic 2. So, I can see that and how that it would make sense. But, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm happy with what they ended up doing. I love Sonic 2. That's one of my all-time favorites. So, it's in my top 5, as I mentioned in the last episode. So.
Stilette Leray says Sonic's origin story in Sega of America is hilarious. He is not that character at all. Good, Stilette, would you mind clarifying? I don't.
The floor, Stilette.
Yeah, lay it on us. What exactly you mean? I don't know Sonic's origin story with Sega of America. I do know that when they were trying to conjure up what animal Sonic should be, I think originally he was going to be a dog. And then a rabbit, and they eventually settled on Hedgehog. But I know he was close to being a dog. But Stilette, if you would, feel free to elaborate on that origin story. That sounds fun. But, you know, again, there's a lot coming down the the pipeline with Sonic here. We've got 3 waves of DLC on the way. We've got the 3rd movie. How is that TV show doing? I haven't really gotten into it or looked at it at all. Have you seen that new TV show? Yo, Chris, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No, I haven't watched any of the new TV show, to be honest.
Me neither. I've heard, you know, it's funny. It's one of those things where it's like I haven't heard neither good nor bad. You know what I mean? I feel like
I've seen the memes of it, and it seems funny.
Yeah. But honestly, it's funny. Sonic has always been pretty good about their TV shows. Like from the beginning. Yeah. Even like the Sonic Underground days, like way back in the day.
Yeah.
You know, Sonic Underground, Sonic X. Like, dude, even Sonic Boom was funny. You know what I mean? For all its warts, at least Sonic Boom was funny.
Yeah.
Okay, Lamb hits us with a fun fact. Says Kronos, Oranos, and Rhea Island were meant to be one full zone, but due to time constraints and very little people working on the game, they split it into 3 separate islands. And you know, I guess that would explain why you don't have things like a Chao Garden, because maybe it was a very small team working on this game, because honestly, maybe this game was such a risk and Sega wasn't convinced people would buy an open world Sonic game that they didn't give it as much of a budget as they could. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's definitely interesting that it was all meant to be one. In that case, would have likely been more of an open world game in that regards, but I kind of like what they ended up giving us instead.
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, they might have been limited. Wait a minute. What is this? The Sonic Bible? It's called the Sonic Bible. All right, I'm gonna look this up. The Sonic.
Yeah, please.
Okay, whoa, whoa. Okay, hold up.
It's a rabbit hole, isn't it?
This is such a rabbit hole that we're gonna take a quick break because I gotta run to the bathroom real quick. So stick with us for a little while. We're gonna take a quick little break, and we'll be right back to talk about the Sonic Bible. Oh
I'm
man.
gonna look this up on my end as well.
Yeah, get acquainted. We'll be back in a couple minutes, everybody. Hang tight. Okay, and we are back. Thank you for your patience. As you guys know, like I said, I got this seasonal allergy keeping my voice dry. So I got to drink a lot of water during these podcasts. So thank you for dealing with those bathroom breaks. Anyway, the Sonic Bible is upon us. I'm going to read this out for everybody. So here we go.
Crazy.
The Sonic Bible is an internal document created by Sega of America in 1991. During the production of this original Sonic the Hedgehog game, at the time of writing, Sega of America had little to no exposure to any original Japanese fiction relating to Sonic, and the Bible was an attempt to establish the definitive Sonic backstory in non-Japanese regions. Okay, there's a lot to this. Let me see if I can get like a little summary. Okay, it was never published and continually revised, so many different versions exist.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Here are some examples. According to the Bible, Dr. Robotnik was once a kind human scientist named Dr. Ovi Kintobor before being turned evil by a lab accident.
Ooh. Hate it when that happens.
Okay. The Bible has been publicly released as of 2009. I'm trying to see if I can find any fun tidbits.
Oh, I got one here. So,
yeah, go for it.
Specifically, Sonic, whose real name is revealed to be Sonny Hedgehog, lives under a hedge next to a burger joint in Hardy, Nebraska with his mother and 5 sisters. He's a regular hedgehog about the size of a bowling ball. He even visits bowling alleys to play practical jokes on the bowlers by curling up and pretending to be a bowling ball. Let's see here. Although he doesn't speak human language, he learns to read and write by watching human children play. Against his mother's wishes, Sonny joins Hardy's track team. He wins many awards until the time comes to hibernate. While hibernating, he is actually dug up by Dr. Obi Kintabor, or Robotnik, who is using the cog window retractable portulent. Wow, that's a lot of big words. To search for the emeralds, specifically the gray emerald. Kintabor, or Robotnik, used a machine called a Lingua Scramblerum to teach Sonny to speak human language. Kintabor, who allows Sonny to call him Dr. K, explains that he needs the emeralds to reverse years of pollution and return planet Earth to its natural state. He
Yeah.
operates a lab under a local toxic waste dump where he rescues poisoned and struggling animals. Sonny befriends many of these animals before being appointed as his assistant, at which Kintobor starts teaching him about physics. In order to pass time, Sonny uses a treadmill that Kintobor has constructed, but when he breaks a sound barrier, 761 miles per hour, he inexplicably crosses all known limits of acceleration and laws of physics and starts running at the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second. Kintabar is alarmed and slows the treadmill, only to find that Sonny has been turned blue by the advanced non-concussive cobalt effect. Kintabar renames Sonny as Sonic due to his display of fast speed.
Can I pick up
Sonic
this?
uses
Oh,
his
you got this. You got this.
Sonic uses his new to help Kintabar with his work, and in the process discovers the reverse quantum bioformulator or QBF, a machine composed entirely out of gold rings.
This is where it gets
Kintabar
nuts. This is where it gets nuts.
Oh my god, Kutmars used this machine to transform all the evil in the world into 6 emeralds, as they used to be 6 Chaos
Yeah.
Emeralds, up by Kintabar himself, which he has stored in a lead lined cabinet. Kintabar says that the emeralds could eliminate all evil and pollution if stabilized by the Great Emerald, or else double the amount of evil in the world if they were to be disturbed by
So,
radiation.
so the
Just
original. So
then,
I just want to say there. I kind of like their lore of the 7 Chaos Emeralds. That you have these 6 emeralds where like the evil of the world is like being contained within them, and the only way is to get this 7th gray emerald, which could eliminate all of it. It's I don't know. It's kind of I like what Sonic lore is better, but it's not a terribly written thing. I'm not gonna lie. Like it started off
they put
pretty
a lot of
goofy.
effort into it.
Like it started off pretty goofy, but like this Robotnik backstory is not bad. Please keep going.
Yeah. I mean, okay. So just then, a wave of radiation penetrates the Earth's surface and affects the emerald. The RQBF, or reverse quantum bioformulator, turns on and casts a beam of light on Kixpor. The emeralds and a half-eaten egg that Kixpor was eating.
Oh my god, that's why he's Eggman.
There is no explosion, but Kitabar is somehow transformed into the obese
Obese
and
and
evil
evil.
Dr. Ivo Robotnik. Sonic grabs many gold rings as he can, then escapes. Yeah, and that's all I got, at least on this wiki page here.
The only problem I have with this is like honestly, I understand they're being goofy and they're being fun, but I like how just a random wave of radiation came out of nowhere. Like it's like, and then
And
suddenly,
that was the one thing that could
yeah, it's like oh suddenly, oh god, that is funny. I never knew this
make
existed.
so funny too.
Oh my goodness. Drafts 1 and 2 were both produced on June 24th, 1991, and are much closer to the early Sonic canon that was eventually established. The Bible claims that Sonic's animal friends have large families. This is intended to explain the appearance of multiple identical animals in the original Sonic game.
The animals you save from the
Yeah.
little capsules, the levels.
Oh, someone in the chat mentioned this. Kevin Ribeiro says, fun fact, this version of Robotnik in the comics is still around. Are you telling me there's a whole like version of the comics where they run with this lore? That's cool.
I like that a lot.
That is intense.
Because the movie, the first movie takes place in Montana. I almost wish they took influence from this and made it take place
Made
in
it
Nebraska.
Nebraska, yeah. I would actually love that. The
Yeah.
Nebraska, the subtle nod to Nebraska. Okay. That's intense, man. Again, you never know. You never know what's hiding in the history of Sonic the Hedgehog. Not to mention the whole like Michael Jackson saga with the Sonic the Hedgehog 2 soundtrack.
With Sonic
Like
3.
I feel like he was such a sensation in the 90s. And the 90s was like when it came to like artistic expression, the 90s was such like a free for all that like when Sonic the Hedgehog came through as a boom, I feel like he, no pun intended, ran in a million different directions. Consider the Archie comics. Consider the Sonic Underground TV show. Consider that other Sonic TV show that was more in line with the games.
There were 3 Sonic TV shows in the
Yeah.
90s, I believe.
And that's kind of what I mean is like the popularity of this character was so explosive that everyone just took it and ran in a million directions with it.
Yeah.
Crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. All right, so we're coming up on an hour and a half here. Barring any other Sonic Bibles we haven't discussed.
This is so crazy.
I think, they mentioned that people are selling them on eBay. I'm actually,
Yeah.
you know what? This is the beauty of doing a podcast right in front of my computer. I'm going to look up if any Sonic Bibles are for sale on eBay right now. No. That ship has sailed. Whoever owns these things is holding on to them. But anyway, so coming up on an hour and a half, I think we've covered everything. If anyone in the chat has something they wanted to ask or, wanted to lay something out, please feel free to punch it in. Chris, was there anything remaining that you wanted to discuss today?
Yeah, I want to show
go.
everyone the original design when he was Dr. Obi Kintobar.
Oh my goodness! It's Obi Kintobar! I feel like I could get a drink with that guy. Look at him.
Honestly. It specifically says alignment.
That's cool, man. Kevin Ribeiro says, all of them in a way are their own thing, and Game Sonic has met them. I think it was you, Kevin. You were in the chat earlier. You're saying, like, the Sonic multiverse is wild because he's technically been in Persona, and he's technically been in Devil May Cry, and he's technically been in Shin Megami Tensei. And, I don't know how much of that Sega considers canon, but I'm sure with all the multiverses of him running around, they can make it work. Stilette Luray asks, do you think we'll see Sonic in Kingdom Hearts since he was in Wreck-It Ralph? I don't know where they're going to take that, Stilette. I know because Wreck-It Ralph is canon with Street Fighter, it's canon with Mario, it's canon with Sonic. That's some you know what? But Sonic is cross-platform. Sega wouldn't care. Honestly, though, I don't think so, Stilette. I'm going to give you a hard no because I don't think Square Enix is going to pay that licensing fee. Disney had to pay a hefty penny for that licensing fee, and they're Disney. They can pay it. At least back then they could pay it. But they could pay it. Square Enix doesn't have that kind of cash to be paying for the licensing fees of Sonic and Mario. If I'm not mistaken, they already kind of... I'm not quite sure what the nature of their relationship is, but I'm pretty sure they already have fees like that for the Kingdom Hearts games that they make. But other than that, I think I've covered everything I wanted to cover about Sonic. Yeah. I was very upset he wasn't in Wreck-It Ralph 2. Then again, Wreck-It Ralph 2 was garbage, and Wreck-It Ralph 1 is a timeless classic.
Yep.
I will die on that hill. Wreck-It Ralph 1, timeless classic. Stilette says, I hope we get more Wreck-It Ralph connecting to Unreality via the internet, but I feel you. Listen, Wreck-It Ralph will be in the next saga of Kingdom Hearts. That I can guarantee you. As for Sonic being there, not so much. But that pretty much covers everything. This was a good time. I mean, we got to talk some Sonic. Yeah. It's cool, man. You
learned a lot.
Learned a lot, dude. You've come in here talking Sonic the Hedgehog and Star Fox, just like two very solid things we played growing up. When is that new Assassin's Creed game coming out?
Honestly, I haven't read up too much on it, so I'm not too sure.
Because for those who don't know, and Stilette says, thank you for coming, Chris. It was great to see you. For those who...
Thank you for all your input.
Yeah, seriously. The chat's the best.
Yep.
Oh, God, what was I about to say? I forgot. Lamb says another fun fact. There was going to be an original 4th island for Frontiers, but the time constraints and only 60 people working on the game, it wasn't possible. Wow, that's a small team.
All right, here we go. June 30th, 2023, Assassin's Creed Mirage.
Yes, and I guess that's what I was going to get into. For those who don't know, there is a 3rd Landi brother. But he's not up to... Yes, but he's not up to speed on Sonic, so we're saving his debut. When this is a game all 3 of us are going to play, we'll have to have him in then. But yeah, you could definitely look forward to that. Kevin says the Sonic in Wreck-It Ralph is a data Sonic, as the games are not the originals of the characters that are supposed to be there. That's a good point, because it's like in Wreck-It Ralph, it's technically an arcade machine hooked up to the hub. It's not the Sonic that we know. That's a very good point. But anyway, we're going to wrap up there. Thank you for hanging out, everybody. Chris, thank you for coming on. And thank you to the Sages for keeping this going. Yeah, we're going to close it out there. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. Oh my God, I didn't even see this. Treehouse rated us on Twitch. He resubbed at 24 months. And then Lands of Master subscribed at 29 months. I completely missed it. Well, I'm sorry, guys. Thanks for hanging out. I'll have to text them after this. Anyway, thanks for hanging out, everybody.